It was supposed to be an ordinary flight. A small passenger aircraft was traveling across a remote mountain range, carrying just a handful of people. Most of them were complete strangers, each with their own destination, their own plans, and their own secrets. Outside, dark storm clouds gathered across the sky. The cabin lights flickered. Moments later, the captain's voice broke the silence. "There appears to be a technical problem with one of the engines. Please remain calm and keep your seatbelts fastened." Before anyone had time to react, the aircraft shook violently. The turbulence became unbearable. Luggage burst from the overhead compartments. People screamed. Then, everything went black. Daniel slowly opened his eyes. Smoke drifted through the air. Pieces of twisted metal lay scattered across the forest floor. The aircraft had crashed deep inside an enormous jungle, far away from civilization. Several passengers had died instantly. Only 9 people had survived. Some were seriously injured. Others could barely stand. There was no mobile signal, no radio, no road, no sign that anyone even knew they were alive. They quickly realized one terrifying truth. Rescue might never come. Their only chance of survival was to work together. During the first day, they searched the wreckage for food, clean water, medical supplies, and anything that could help them survive another night. At first, they acted like a team. But fear has a strange way of changing people. As darkness covered the jungle, an uneasy silence settled over the camp. Somewhere in the distance, something whistled through the trees. Nobody knew whether it was an animal or something else. Nobody slept. The following morning, one of the survivors was missing. His footprints led away from the camp before disappearing into the undergrowth. After hours of searching, they finally found him. He was dead. There were no signs of an animal attack, no obvious injuries, just a frozen expression of absolute terror upon his face. Everyone assumed it had been a tragic accident. Everyone except Professor Harris. After carefully examining the scene, he quietly said, "This wasn't an accident. Someone moved the body." Those few words changed everything. If he was right, the killer was already among them. From that moment onwards, trust vanished. Every conversation became an interrogation. Every silence became suspicious. Everyone began hiding something. One woman claimed to be a doctor. Later, they discovered she had never practiced medicine. A businessman carried 2 passports under different names. Another passenger possessed detailed maps of the surrounding region, despite insisting he had never been there before. Every new discovery created more questions than answers. Nobody knew who they could trust. Then another survivor died. This time, there could be no doubt. Someone was murdering them. One by one, panic spread through the group. They organized night watches. Nobody was ever left alone. Yet an impossible question remained. How do you protect yourself when the person guarding you might be the killer? While searching through the wreckage, Daniel made another disturbing discovery. The aircraft's flight recorder had been deliberately smashed, not damaged in the crash, destroyed afterwards. Someone wanted to erase the truth. That meant the crash itself might never have been an accident. Perhaps somebody had planned this from the very beginning. As the days passed, pieces of the puzzle slowly began falling into place. One evening, they shared stories from their pasts. What they discovered left them speechless. Years earlier, every single one of them had been connected, in one way or another, to the same powerful pharmaceutical corporation. One had worked there. Another had investigated them as a journalist. One had represented victims in court. Another had been responsible for company security. Each believed the connection was merely coincidence. But Daniel no longer believed in coincidence. Someone had chosen these passengers for a reason. Driven by desperation, they ventured deeper into the jungle. There, hidden beneath thick vegetation, they discovered an abandoned research facility. The buildings had long been deserted. Rust covered every machine. Dust filled every corridor. But on one cracked concrete wall, someone had written 4 chilling words: "Trust no one." Before anyone could speak, a gunshot echoed through the trees. Another survivor collapsed to the ground. The killer now had a firearm, and they still had no idea who it was. Only 4 survivors remained. Every one of them suspected the others. Every piece of evidence pointed in a different direction. Friendships disappeared. Fear replaced reason. The jungle itself no longer seemed like their greatest enemy. They had become prisoners of their own suspicion. On the final night, a violent storm swept across the forest. Rain poured relentlessly. Visibility disappeared. Separated from the others, Daniel followed a faint light towards a narrow cave hidden beneath the cliffs. Inside, his torch revealed something impossible. The walls were covered with photographs. Photographs of every survivor. Some had clearly been taken months before the flight. Someone had been watching them long before the aircraft ever left the runway. Then, from somewhere within the darkness, a calm voice whispered, "You thought this was an accident. It never was. This was judgment." Daniel spun around. His torch suddenly failed. The cave fell into complete darkness. A single gunshot shattered the silence. At first light, a rescue helicopter finally arrived. The search teams found only one survivor. He sat silently beside the wreckage, staring into the distance. When investigators asked what had happened, he simply replied, "I don't know who the killer was." By the end, we had all become so consumed by fear that we could no longer tell the difference between guilt and innocence. The official investigation continued for years. Fragments of evidence were recovered. Questions were asked. Theories were formed. Yet the truth was never uncovered. Was the crash carefully orchestrated? Who had chosen the passengers? Who had followed them before the flight? And who fired the final shot inside the cave? Some mysteries are solved by evidence. Others are buried forever beneath the silence of the jungle.